met up with your counterpart. So are you going to put it too? No, I'm just taking shots.
Almighty and gracious God, we gather to remember and to honor Ed Scott and Beverly, his wife, and their family. We thank you for his devotion to the village of Menands and his dedication to the Menands Fire Company. We thank you for his enthusiasm and his constant friendliness. You made us, God, to care for each other, and we thank you for all who give of themselves as volunteers. We pray in particular for all members of the Menands Fire Company and those in Colony and throughout this area. We thank you for their dedication and their courage and their willingness to serve others. Bless our communities, we pray. Bless all of us and build up our lives together. And we pray in Christ's holy name. Amen.
Amen. This is all my fault. I remember pleading with my father across the dinner table when I was about 11 to get involved in the village of Menands. I figured, well, he wasn't born in the village like I was, my brother. So I thought that maybe by getting involved, joining the fire department, like my friend Buzzy Harbor's father did. You know, geez, Dad, all my friends' fathers in the fire department. I wanted him to be a fireman. I wanted my mom to join the PTA, be a normal 60s family. So eventually he joined, and as he started with the Monday night meetings and drills every week, my mother got to watch what she wanted to watch on television. And one day Dad brought home the Plectron. And for you younger firefighters out there, the Plectron was kind of like a pager, except it weighed 15 pounds. It had, if you wanted to make it portable, you had to have a car battery hooked up to the thing. So when the thing would go off, and my father would run out the door with his turnout gear, I'd go sit in front of the Plectron and switch it from alert to monitor and sit there and listen to wait for my father's voice. You could always tell the seriousness of the call by the tone of his voice. And it intrigued me enough to want to get involved too, but not being 18, I couldn't join the fire company. The Riverside Ambulance had just formed, and my father was being one of the charter members of that, so I started taking first aid courses so I could start riding. When I turned 18, I joined the fire company. It was only then that I found out that drills and meetings were excuses to get out of the house and play cards and drink some beer after the business was done. We got to go on a lot of calls together. Some of the more memorable ones were the Mako Auto Body on Broadway. They're like 35-gallon drums of paint, they're blown up all over the place. And monkey wards, I remember going to monkey wards with my mother when I was young, and I wanted to know where the monkey was. So the monkey ward's a warehouse on Broadway was another one. I remember that because it was an all-nighter. I remember seeing the sun come up the next day, and I was like, wow, that's what bad fires are like. But the worst one was Lieutenant Mary Ann Krupsak's house up in Sky Hollow. And past Fire Chief Ken Fonda was the police officer on duty that night. And when the Plectron went off, we saw him go tearing up Ward's Lane. We weren't too far behind. We got to the top of the hill, and it was just, you could see the smoke, and it was like, you know, one of those bad feelings. And so we go down the hill, and we come around the corner, and the smoke and flames are just billowing out of the building, fully involved. And it was just the three of us there, standing there looking at each other, because there was no fire apparatus there yet. So it was one of those true holy cow moments. We could hear 425 coming, and it's ironic that 425 is parked out front, and it had a distinctive siren, so we knew that's what rig was coming. And all I could do was say to myself, come on, come on. That was a tough one, but it was one of those fires where you appreciate the drills and the training courses, and it got me through that. I remember him coming up to me while I was manning a hose at the front door, and he was like, you okay? You need a break? Everything okay? I'm like, yeah, sure, everything's fine. Well, then move that nozzle around. Don't just stand there. And I was like, well, go yell at some other fireman. It wasn't until last week that I realized how my mother must have felt with both of us now fighting fires. And her at home listening on a scanner. And maybe that's why she joined the Ladies Auxiliary. They would bring Code 7 to the scene, and I think that's the way she could keep her eye on both of us. As he got more and more involved with all things firematic, we saw less and less of him. I had created a monster. I won't go into all of the positions that he held in various fire organizations. Most of you know that he was past president of the Menands Fire Company, and although there was a lot of responsibility involved with that position, he wouldn't have taken it if he didn't think he could have made a difference. I know that he inspired at least one friend of mine to join his local rescue squad and fire department after talking to my father about his experiences. When he retired from the insurance business, I thought he might quit the fire department also. But you know what happens to old firemen. Yes, they become fire police. I don't know how he ended up being captain. He must have been elected. We worried about him a lot at fire scenes, and I bought him flashlights and flashing LED armbands so he would be more visible. Unfortunately, force fields are still only in the domain of Star Trek, or I would have gotten him one of those too. In closing, I would just like to thank the Brotherhood of Firemen for their tremendous outpouring of sympathy to our family, especially the members of the Menands Fire Company, Mayor Coates, Don Hanrahan, Frank Primo. I know you will miss him as much as we will. I would also like to thank everyone that brought food over to my parents' house. This shirt fit me last month. I want to thank all of my friends, my brother's friends, and my parents' friends and for their kind words and deeds. And special thanks to our family, our cousins and aunts and uncles who came from far and wide. You were all there when we needed you, and I'll never forget that. For all you fire people out there, please be safe. Thank you very much.
I hope somebody mentioned the dispatch to hold those calls. You know where we get it from, huh? My mother's family was raised in the fine village of Menands. When my parents married, they chose to stay and raise their family there. Growing up, I was given the freedom and had the need and desire to explore the village from end to end. Although you can drive through Menands rather quickly, for a kid on a bike or hiking, and with a few minor distractions, it could take you all day. Then when that 6 o'clock fire whistle unexpectedly went off, you were brought back to the reality that you had better get your ass back for dinner, quick, wherever you were. These childhood distractions did not, however, keep me from noticing that my dad was not around a lot of the time. He felt the need to obtain a second income to support his family. As an employee of Albany Motor Ambulance Service, he was away from home many nights and holidays. And yet, the second income was able to give him the experience and forethought to see that the emergency coverage system that had existed at that time had a bigger role and responsibility to the community to play than it was currently providing. He set out with a handful of other volunteers to effectively plan and implement the beginning of something wonderful, Riverside Volunteer Ambulance Squad. Well, if I had thought he wasn't around much before, I was about to learn what the word commitment really meant. Our dinners, vacations, holidays, and other family activities often were planned around my father's commitment to the squad. Hell, I couldn't even count how many times I was told to get off the phone because Dad was on call. That goes back before there was plectrons and all that stuff. It was a landline. Every time it rang, you didn't know. It's your friend. Tell him to hurry up. Although his time and energy needed to be focused on this little village's new ambulance service, his thoughts and plans were to find homes in the minds and hearts of many others. The small beginning of emergency service has continued to grow and improve to what exists today. You should all be proud of the services you provide to your communities. His service to the community continued with his move to the Menands Fire Company #1 and his movement through various line and administrative positions. This chapter in his life continued until the time of his death. Now, as an adult, I look back and reflect and can clearly say that it is not bitterness or regret I feel due to his time spent away from family, but extreme pride. This strong need to give back to community that was instilled in me from my father and is in you folks out there is indeed justified and repaid in the small details present in the experience of helping others. In over 10 years with the Boy Scouts as a leader, I have personally worked with many scouts covering the various advancement requirements involving first aid, fire safety, and other important training. During this time, several scouts calmly and effectively used their training to help family and others. One scout, recently a new member of the Post and Kill Fire Department, needed to use his training and experience from scouting at home to save his mother from a life-threatening laceration. As the time constraints of daily life in these busy times we live in pressure us all, many volunteer emergency organizations have had serious reductions in available staff. These constraints, combined with the required training regimen set by the state of New York, has left this emergency community near a state of emergency itself. Although many measures have been taken to help alleviate the situation over the years by both the individual organizations and the state, I would like to call on our new governor to direct the various state agencies involved in overseeing this community to review, fund, and offer more help in recruiting and maintaining the staffing levels required to meet the daily needs of the communities we live in. In this post-9/11 world, with a global economy, it is still our families, friends, and neighbors that respond to our unexpected needs. You volunteers have been well trained and have experienced many emergency situations in the execution of your duties. You are supposed to be the safest of the safe. As family, we know there are inherent dangers faced each time that siren calls. We know that you have committed yourselves to respond and to provide any help within your capabilities to those in need. Although we may need to suppress our fears and concerns each time you roll, our sense of pride allows us to continue to let you do your job. We just ask that as you're responding to help that stranger, you think of your family and friends just long enough to take that extra moment to ensure your turnout gear is complete, you've got your buddy with you, and that you use the best available protection that is afforded. We want you to come home when you're done.
Thanks to the miracle that is email, I sent some stuff down, my thoughts down to Bev this weekend, and they asked me to say this. So, you all knew my Uncle Eddie as Scotty. To me, he was just my Uncle Eddie, and I call this my Uncle Eddie. Some of the fondest and happiest times of my childhood were the times I spent with my Uncle Eddie. The long drive to Grandma's house was filled with the excitement and anticipation that we all feel when we're going to visit family for the holidays, which in our family almost always meant a trip to Aunt Bev and Uncle Eddie's. But nothing could fill a kid with more excitement and anticipation than the Uncle Eddie show. Growing up in a family with Uncle Eddie was like having Jonathan Winters, Red Skelton, Jack Gleason, and Buddy Hackett at every gathering. His funny faces, goofy hats, and great stories, usually age-appropriate, were what I was imagining on those long car rides. And as a kid, I often wondered how those other guys got away with stealing all my Uncle Eddie's material. But my Uncle Eddie was much more than the family community. He was a healer. Seeing Uncle Eddie was some of the best therapy in the world. You could not be upset or depressed around Uncle Eddie. If you were, you weren't that way long. His comedic talents aside, he had the great gift of being able to put both hands on your shoulders, look you straight in the eye, and decide just what you needed to hear, be it a few words or more likely a few dozen. There were many times in my life when Uncle Eddie would pull me aside and do just that, sometimes dispensing his wisdom in a story with a moral that didn't become evident until much later. But I knew at that moment that nothing was more important to him than me, and that I was most definitely his favorite nephew of all. And I'm sure that he made my brother, my sister, and all my cousins feel exactly the same way. I feel incredibly lucky to have had my Uncle Eddie in my life. I know I would have been a much different and lesser person had he not been there. The world could do with a few more of my Uncle Eddies. In all the things that truly matter in life, your family, your friends, your community, my Uncle Eddie got it. Not only that, he got it right. And as I go through the rest of my life, I'll continue to use the wisdom and insights he taught me. And I'll try to be a little bit more like him. And when I come across someone who needs it, I'll put on a goofy hat, I'll make a silly face, and I'll be like my Uncle Eddie, a healer, a hero.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. I particularly want to thank the men in blue who are here to honor their brother. I want to thank the officials from the village of Menands who are here to support us, to the officials from the town of Colony, to the officials from Albany County, to the officials from New York State. And like Don said, I particularly want to thank Ed Scott's family, Bev and his two sons, and the extended family. Thank you for Ed. I have a speech. Today is a difficult day for me in particular, and I'm sure for most people in this room. I'm here today as the official representative of the people of the village of Menands to say thank you. I'm not quite used to this official title yet, so please bear with me. I'm trying to look dignified and respectful, but I'm fearful that my demeanor may fail me. I'm here to talk about the loss. The moment that Chief Primo notified me of the tragic loss of my buddy Ed Scott, my heart, like most of yours, has been heavy with sorrow. Not sorrow for Ed, because we all know Ed wouldn't want that. And he'd be cracking jokes at a time like this. He would have been in his glory with all you firemen and fire policemen, emergency staff, being able to glad hand and tell his jokes. The sorrow is not for Ed. The sorrow is for us. For you. For you. For the loss to this community. There are no words I can utter that can make things right or to ease the pain of this battle. So I'm not even going to try. To the Menands Fire Company, your loss too is great. You've lost more than a member. You've lost a brother. Been a lot of conversations over the past 2 weeks at the firehouse, and one in particular stuck in my mind and I thought I might want to share it with you. A fellow firefighter, Dave LaFleur, during one of our debriefings, made a poignant observation. Dave talked about older firefighters having memories of bygone days, and that if they were written down, they would read like a history book on each of their respective fire companies. But when they pass, it's like the closing of that book forever. For the Menands Fire Company, Scotty's passing is more like the closing of an encyclopedia, for he was a font of information about the history of the company. He could look at any picture and tell you who it was, what year, what event, what rank, and what kind of beer they like to drink. Who was Ed Scott? Well, we know by now, I hope, that Ed held a lot of different titles. But the most important ones were husband, father, brother, and friend. He usually had a smile on his face and always a joke on his tongue. He was not a shy man, as most of us know. But he was a humble man. I believe that this impressive turnout would have truly embarrassed him. He would have played the game, he would have been in the limelight, and he would have told his jokes. But he would have been embarrassed that you were all here to honor him. He was not a man who sought praise or compliments, nor did he want recognition. He seemed happiest working behind the scenes. He was a man who simply believed it was important to put the needs of others ahead of his own. And he did it well. Ed was a volunteer extraordinaire. When I think about what Ed meant to the community of Menands and the town colony, I remember a story once told to me by one of my old bosses when we were having a particularly difficult supervision and I threatened to quit. My boss said to me, visualize your hand in a vase filled to the brim with water. Now remove your hand. The hole you leave behind will be how much work will be missed from you when you leave. When I think about Scotty, the case sort of applies, because the work that Scotty did was too important to be left undone. So the hole will fill. But also when I think about Scotty, I realize something that the boss left out of that argument. That when you remove your hand, the vase is no longer filled to the brim. And Scotty had huge hands. Now, for the first time ever about it, I'd like to read a proclamation. Proclamation honoring Edgar H. Scott, April 13, 2007. Whereas Edgar H. Scott served the village residents and the village of Menands as a member of the Menands Fire Company No. 1, incorporated for over 36 years. And whereas Edgar gave many hours of volunteer service to the residents of this community and to the village fire department, Menands Fire Company No. 1, through the many offices he held with the fire company, up to and including president. And whereas during Edgar's service with the Menands Fire Company No. 1, he also served the position of fire warden for the village for more than 30 years and performed countless fire inspections for the businesses of the village. And whereas Edgar, whom put the interests of others and the village above his own, will be missed by the entire community. Now therefore, I do by here proclaim that the village of Menands recognize Edgar H. Scott and call upon the residents to join with me in saluting Edgar for his dedication and service in the entire village of Menands community. While thinking about what to write, years ago, when one of my personal heroes in the sports world passed, there was a lot written about him. And this quote that I'm about to read struck me as fitting in. True heroism is remarkably sober and very undramatic. It is not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but the urge to serve others at whatever cost. I know Ed is going before us, and when our turns come to leave this earth, Ed will be waiting at the pearly gates, wearing a big smile, probably a bright yellow slicker, waving his traffic wand, and flagging us towards our heavenly rewards. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, the Scott family.
On behalf of myself and the Colony Town Board, several of which are with me this evening, I want to thank you for the opportunity, but also the honor to say a few words in memory of Scotty. And that's how I knew him, was Scotty. I never really, I thought his name was Edward, to tell you the truth. I never heard anybody call him Edward. It was always Scotty. And to know Scotty was to love him. Anyone who had the pleasure of knowing Scotty would describe him using words, and we've heard them already tonight: funny, hilarious, jovial, the jokester. And I think I really learned tonight about the Uncle Eddie show. Because to me, that was what he always was a show, in and of himself. But even though we've heard those words that described him, I think he was much more than that. He was kind, he was caring, and he was a giving individual. And when I reflect on what Scotty meant to me in my life, I feel a very warm glow around me. I cannot remember exactly when I first met him, but having been an elected official now for 24 years in the town of Colony, and been involved with all the volunteer fire departments throughout the town, and all the events and happenings that take place within the town, it seems like I have known Scotty forever. But when I became supervisor in 1996, and that was the year that I assumed the awesome job of trying to fill Fred Field's shoes, and not an easy feat at that. That was when I really got to know Scotty at the number of events that I was at. And I began to have more frequent conversations and dialogues with him. And that friendship continued over the years. Scotty was always there for me with a smile, a joke, or a story. Just his facial expressions, without him even opening his mouth, could make anyone feel good about themselves and the job that they were trying to do. Scotty not only loved to tell jokes and to fool and horse around, and he would do it any place. And as my husband and I were talking last evening about Scotty, he could embarrass the hell out of you in a restaurant. And many times we ran into him and Bev at Valenti's or Clancy's Well, which is now Courtney's Well. And if you knew Scotty and you saw Scotty, you knew Scotty loved to eat. But he always loved to tell that joke and to wisecrack. But on the serious side, as has been said, Scotty will always be remembered for his dedication to the town of Colony Fire Police. And as the mayor and I were talking shortly after the tragic death of Scotty, yes, he was from the village of Menands. Yes, the village of Menands is a part of the town of Colony. But in this case, we are all one. We are all one family. And Scotty was a part of that family, and a part of that family that is now gone, and one that we will miss forever. No matter where in this town, and it wasn't just in the village of Colony, you would find Scotty in that yellow slicker directing traffic. I can remember our household hazardous waste days on Wade Road when we'd have lines of people, and he'd be out there with that smile on his face, directing traffic. Accidents, going to the airport, just no matter where in the town, Scotty was there. And it has been said also, volunteerism has always been a natural part of Scotty's life. That was him. He was an inspiration and a role model. And I think for the young people that are here this evening, if you knew Scotty, if you saw Scotty, if you hear what's being said about him tonight, remember that, because he is an inspiration and a role model for you to follow in the future. So as we remember him, let us not be sad tonight. Let us smile at one another. I know Scotty would want it that way. And our thoughts and our prayers on behalf of the whole town of Colony continue to be with you, Bev, and to your sons and your family. Thank you.
As we mourn the passing and honor the life of Ed Scott, as we take this time to recognize and remember the man he was, I first wish to express my deepest sympathy to Bev, Craig, and Doug for their loss, and my sincerest gratitude to you for sharing Scotty with us for all of these years. We in the fire service cannot often speak about the sacrifices made by our families. We hardly talk of the countless hours away from our homes as we respond to the calls or the training or the drills and meetings. We rarely mention the dinners, interruptions, the appointments, cancellations, the ball games, the recitals, or the parties missed, or the well-intended plans postponed. We seldom converse about the bedtime stories that didn't get read, or the goodnight kisses given long after the kids were asleep. These and many more are the sacrifices made by the families of those men and women in the volunteer fire service. To all our families, we thank you for your sacrifices. But how do we thank the Scott family? What words can adequately recognize your sacrifice? For years, when your neighbors were in need, they relied on you and Scotty. Now, in your time of need, please know that you can rely on us. Heroes are ordinary people who perform extraordinary feats. Heroes are people that make a permanent impression on your life. Scotty was a hero, and he made the kind of impression on our lives. Each time the siren blows on the roof of the Menands firehouse, I know I won't be the only one reminded of the ultimate sacrifice that Ed made for his community, his friends, and his family, and his fellow firefighters. I'm pretty sure that everyone here will agree with me that the one trait we will miss most about Ed is his ability to make people laugh. He was a big man with a larger-than-life personality and an even bigger heart. Scotty's humor and heart will be the memories of all whose lives he touched over the years. When we remember Ed, we will do so with a smile. Ed joined the Menands Fire Company in May of 1971. He was active in the fire service from the day he joined the company to the day he died. During that time, he held many offices and titles, some more than once. At the time of his death, Ed held the rank of captain in the fire police and was a village fire warden, as well as a member of the board of the company and chaired several committees. Over the years, Ed held the title of Vice President, Secretary, Chief Inspector, Grievance Chair, and Head Cook and Bottle Washer. He was a member of the first paramedic class to graduate from the town of Colony and one of the founding fathers of Riverside Ambulance. It seems that at one time or another, Ed did it all. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation and gratitude towards the men and women that day on the scene. They demonstrated significant courage and valor in the face of chaos and tragedy. Their strength was unwavering. Their commitment to their duty and to their fallen brother was truly inspiring. You have honored yourself, and you have honored the memory of Scotty. I would also like to express my sincere thanks to all the men and women who provided support to the department and community in our time of loss. That night, when we returned back to the fire station, we were all comforted by our brothers and sisters from our neighboring departments, by members of our community, by our friends and well-wishers. The outpouring of love and support was so heartwarming. I cannot tell you how much that meant to our firefighters and to me personally. Menands Fire Company is honored and proud to have had such a member as Ed Scott, and he will never be forgotten.
fire company. You know, you have always been and will always be a part of our family. We will always be there for you. And on behalf of the entire Menands Fire Company, let me join in with the chief and the mayor in giving our heartfelt thanks to everyone who has helped us in the last week and a half and who's been there for us and who has just shown us tremendous condolences and support, and we really appreciate it. I think I was doing okay until you, Frank. You know, I've given a great deal of thought as to how the fire company would pay tribute to our brother, Ed Scott, on this day, and how we would sum up a lifetime of service to the company. I thought I would tell you about the man who befriended me nearly 20 years ago when I joined the company. And Eddie gave me the benefit of his already extensive experience. How he encouraged me to become an officer. He showed me that service in a volunteer company means a dual contribution to the firematics and the civil operations. He urged me to step forward again a couple of years ago to be president, sort of recycle myself. 10 years after I'd been president the first time, but that was Eddie. He embodied the lesson of a lifetime of service to his company, both on the civil side and the firematic side. That's why on April 3rd, he was the vice chairman of our board of directors and the captain of the fire police when he answered the call to assist in an accident on 787. He has been our president, he has been a line officer, and I believe he has served in nearly every office that we've had over the years. However, as I contemplated his service and our friendship, my thoughts kept coming back, inexplicably to me at first, to one particular event and moment in time. It just happens to be the week of March 26th of this year. I just want to tell you what happened that week. We usually host meetings for one of our more prominent businesses in the village. Helps us raise money for our operations. And when we host these occasions, we typically provide the meeting space at our firehouse, breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner to about 30 people. But it's for an entire week. This effort is time-consuming and requires a lot of dayside support from our members, which, as all of you know, is the hardest time for us to get help. I know I'm usually unable to help because of my work commitments. And usually our members on the day side run the event, several of them, always including Eddie and Beth. The week of March 26th would be a little bit different. Just a couple of days before Monday, when the event was to begin, our circumstances took over that sort of put me in the spot of being responsible for the event. And we didn't know what we'd do. I actually thought about canceling the event, but as usual, we reached out to Scotty and Beth, and they said they'd commit to give us all the help we needed all week long. It was this commitment and the commitment of several other of our volunteers that gave me the confidence to go forward with the event. And I rearranged my schedule so that I could be there at least for most of the time. And the meeting went on as scheduled. And I remember I was probably a little bit annoyed and being stuck and having to change my schedule to help with this event. And I kind of took it for granted that the members would just show up and help. And when I got to the firehouse, I saw all my brothers and sisters there. And it helped me feel better. And then there was Eddie, in his usual great form, He was joking and laughing and busting our chops. And we all cooked, and we served, and we cleaned, and Bev washed the dishes. Eddie and I certainly did. And we got the job done for the company. Eddie and Bev were there every day, as long as we needed them. And I would imagine the story is pretty typical for fire companies, for all of you. It's probably familiar. And at the time, I thought nothing of it. And that was until the night of April 3rd. I guess I was blinded by my annoyance at the circumstances that brought Eddie and I together that week, from realizing how much I truly enjoyed it. While we each left something important to be there, and we worked hard, we had fun. Because we were all together, as brothers and sisters, getting the job done for our company. We had fun because Eddie was there with us. And so there I was late in the night of April 3rd, realizing that the week of March 26th, my last week with Eddie, wasn't annoying or a bother at all. In fact, it was great. It was a great week. It was a perfect week. So now I'll always treasure the memory and lesson that was embodied in that week, a lesson we learned from Eddie, then and during the whole time I knew him. Like a hidden jewel that we all uncovered. The lesson that he always taught us was that, sometimes we argue like brothers. Sometimes we fight and we get angry with one another like brothers. But Eddie always told us, and indeed he showed us, that when there's trouble, when there's work to be done, we must always help each other and watch each other's back like brothers. And so, like a precious jewel, I'll carry that lesson of that week and Eddie's message to us for the rest of my days, and I'll resolve here today to do all I can to live it. And to Eddie, I'll miss you, pal, and thanks for our perfect week together. God bless you.
To Scotty's loving and caring wife, Beverly, his children, Craig and Douglas, Douglas's wife, Patty and her children, to their cousin Bishop Ball, to the entire members of the Scott family, to all the elected officials in the room, to members of the law enforcement and EMS community, fellow firefighters, members of the many associations that Scotty belonged to, and members of the auxiliary. We gather here to present our final salute to our friend and colleague, Edgar H. Scott, better known to all of us as just Scotty. Scotty served the village of Menands as a faithful member of Menands Fire Department for over 35 years and was one of the founding members of the former Riverside Volunteer Ambulance Squad. His attention to duty, guidance, determination to excel, and all of his contributions to the village of Menands and the town of Colony cannot be enumerated in this brief service, but we'll never forget what he has done to make our community a safer, more joyous place to both live and to work. I've known and worked with Scotty for since I was 16 years old, in the early days with the Riverside Volunteer Ambulance Squad and then with the fire department. I remember Scotty as a teacher in those early days with Riverside, imparting his vast knowledge of emergency medicine. As we now found out, and as I knew from before, Scotty moonlighted with the Albany Motor Ambulance Squad, a professional squad in the city of Albany. So he was able to bring those skills and that knowledge to his village and share that with us. And then later, when I was 18, I was able to join the fire company, and Scotty was my mentor there also. He shared his leadership skills with me. He built confidence in me. He inspired me to learn and to lead. He was not just a mentor, though, he was a motivator. And a great motivator he was. But as we all know, one of Scotty's greatest attributes that will be sorely missed was his great sense of humor, as we found out from family and other people. Scotty had a unique sense of humor, and to me that was a cross between the comedian, and I'm glad his nephew said it, Jonathan Winters, because he used to always come up with some strange imagination. And by the way, who the hell is Fern Fargo anyway? Because that was one of Scotty's favorite pet names. And the other comedian that he reminded him of, and maybe is a little bit more obscure, was Gordon Jump. Remember the sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati? Scotty had his face, and he had a sense of humor. He was always just quick with his wit, perfect timing. He always knew what to say. No matter if it was a tragic loss of life or property, or handling some of those tense moments at the firehouse, at those meetings, and the grievance committee meetings. He always just knew what to say and when to say it. And I'd like to share this story with you. It's not for the squeamish, so if you're a little squeamish, but this was typical Scotty at its best. There was a suicide, a successful suicide in the village of Menands way back when the passenger trains used to run behind Morgan Linen and the east side of the village. Unfortunately, the fellow was very successful. He just couldn't take the anxieties and stresses of life and put his head on the tracks, and when the 515 came by, it took care of him. Scotty, along with the Riverside Ambulance Squad and the Menands Police Department, responded to this tragic accident. There was a passenger train too, so they had to deal with the folks still on the train car. But Scotty, looking around, seeing his fellow responders who weren't used to this type of tragic incident, knew he had to lighten their load. Scotty, in typical fashion, went over, gathered up the recently deceased, his head, wrapped in a towel, and he was walking back down the tracks, talking to the head. He actually knew the person. He said, Joey, everybody has got problems. Everybody has got situations in his hands, but was this anything to lose your head over? True story, there's people in the room that can vouch for that. That was Scotty at his best. He knew just what to say and when to say it. But he also used his sense of humor and his robust personality to make even strangers feel welcome. He had that natural ability to do that. He'd walk over to a person and just talk with you, joke with you, make you laugh. He'd hug you. And depending on how many black velvet and gingers he had, you might get an old Scotty kiss on the cheek too. I got many of them, thank God, because I cherish those moments. Although Scotty was a jokester, he was very dedicated and serious and passionate about fire prevention. He always said that there's no glory in fighting a fire that could have been prevented. Scotty served continuously on the Village of Menands fire inspection team since its inception. For over 30 years, Chief Inspector Scott, and boy, he loved that title. He always used to make me call Chief Inspector. But he was our Chief Inspector. He gave up his time with the other inspectors, but Scotty was the continuous one from the day of its inception till now. Over 3 hours were donated every Saturday to inspect the villages, to inspect the businesses in the village of Menands, and countless hours afterwards spent on the time arranging these inspections, the paperwork, and the other administrative duties. Literally thousands of hours were donated to this cause. Above and beyond whatever thing, all the other time Scotty donated. He spent literally thousands of hours in fire prevention activities. Some of these businesses, in case you're not familiar with the village, range from small convenience stores like the Stewart stores on Broadway, to shopping malls like Price Chopper and Mid-City Shopping Center, to large manufacturing and international corporations like Albany International, better known as the Felt Company. to large business occupancies, like what the old Montgomery words, are better known as they used to say, monkey words too. We're all better off for having Scotty touch our lives. And Scotty, Chief Inspector, I salute you. You may be gone, but you'll never be forgotten. I love you. God bless you all.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here to celebrate the life of Fire Police Officer Edgar H. Scott. This time I'd like to express my sincere condolences to the Scott family, the Menands Fire Company family, and the Village of Menands family. Edgar Scott, as you'll see in the pictures that I brought with me tonight, and we're very proud of these, was a great asset to the training arena of the fire police. He was a sincere student, and I have enjoyed having him in my classes. He was very sensitive, because he knew when I was teaching there would be a lot of people like Mr. Benedetto, and I could list them all. It would be going like this, you know, they'd be putting their hands up and move to the left and move to the right. And you probably all know now why. And he was the first person to give me a hat. Oh boy, I tell you. He saw what I was going through and he came up and said, "Tom, this hat is for you. So when you're out there, your hair's not blowing all over." So there goes that sensitivity right out the window. His attendance and his ability to critique in a positive manner was greatly appreciated by all. And as you can see, camaraderie was among the fire police in the town as his most top priority. He had an uncanny ability to communicate one-on-one or keep a crowd bent over with laughter. Scotty would take the time to listen while entertaining a humorous reply. And I'm really not sure if Don Kirk from Fuller Road is waiting for his eminence for a visitation with him or when he's just getting over it. As a captain of his fire police squad, he was always in the command mode. I believe here in this picture he is asking his sergeant, Ed Himes, to go warm up the car for me, sir, after a training session. And of course, I caught Scotty, Mr. Community Ambassador, engaged in a conversation here with the local Girl Scouts troop just before a county fire police meeting at Stanford Heights, too. I actually got to know Edgar Scott when a page would be sent out for the town fire police to assist Menands right after some torrential downpour. I would show up to see Scotty performing his water marine duties. Well, the idea of a marine response vehicle for Scotty was born. And believe me, mutual aid in the design was great. I told him, yeah, I actually did a PowerPoint, Chief, at the last, one of the last meetings we had, and he saw this. About 7 or 8 other vehicles that we had in there that were all labeled this way, and he was going to take his pick. But I told him, just park it in front of the house, Bev. I didn't tell you this, but it's coming out now. And when it rained, you were good to go. Well, the closest he got for a boat was M424. He was proud and grateful of this vehicle. He asked me to come down and take some pictures so I could bring it to the county meeting and to the state meeting to show other fire police and other squads and other fire departments anywhere I went what the Village of Menands had for their fire police. The next picture was taken as Scotty had made a comment, and we're talking about sensitivity here, that definitely put a laugh on your face. He could give you a line for a laugh, but if you returned a zinger, he respected you for that and would laugh with you. I respected his comments, his words of encouragement, and his outright great humor that surrounded him anywhere he went. I want to thank his wife, Beverly, his sons, Craig and Douglas, the Menands Fire Company and its fire police for sharing Scotty with all of us in the fire service of the town of Colony and Albany County. Thank you.
Evening. As a lay chaplain, I come in sorrow and I come with respect for a fallen brother, Edgar Scott. He was a member of our associations, Hudson Mohawk and Hudson Valley. As I mentioned before, I come in prayer. Please join me this evening. Every great sorrow ravages the soul with its own particular sadness. But what sadness can compare with that sense of utter desolation that consumes us when we suffer the loss of a loved one? It is too deep for tears, and it's too numbing to let the kindness and sympathy of our friends ease our grief and loneliness. Later the tears will come. Later the kindness and sympathy, it will help. But for the moment, for tonight, we remain alone in our sorrows. We feel lost, and we feel abandoned in this our time of supreme need. We're not really alone, not really abandoned, for though we may remain beyond the reach of human consolation, Jesus, now more than ever, draws us near and offers his help. In his infinite love and compassion, he yearns to come and abide with us, bringing understanding and consolation that only he alone can bestow at such a time as tonight. We need only open our grief-stricken hearts to him. Now his timely message is our greatest need. Now we must listen to his words as we have never before. Our friends can do no more than commensurate with us tonight in our griefs. He alone gives us strength. He alone lifts our hearts with his truths. Come unto me, he whispers to us, and I will give you rest. If we respond to his loving invitation, allowing his divine wisdom to pierce the heavy sadness that curtains our souls, we will receive the sweet rest and refreshment he has promised. Now, when our bereavement has emptied our hearts of all else, he will teach us the true meaning of life, of suffering, and yes, of death. As we listen to him, our present sorrow will not indeed vanish. Jesus' message provides more than mere short-term comfort. It will open our eyes to wider spiritual horizons and teach us to see our bereavement in a new perspective. And as our spiritual vision grows under the Master's instruction, the peace of Christ that surpasses all understanding will slowly and most surely replace the void in our hearts. May the soul of Scotty rest in the house of the Lord in eternal peace. Amen. Thank you.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but
Mayor Tom Coates will present a village flag to Beverly Scott. This flag was flown at the firehouse in the honor of her husband, Eddie. When we were putting this program together, we had the help of a lot of people throughout the town, state, and the county. And one of the things they told me is that you're gonna screw up doing something. I went out of order and I apologize. There's some people in attendance today that I'd like to recognize. Vice President Ken Askew, representing the New York State Fire Police Association. Chief Chaplain Bob Abbey for the New York State Fire Police Association. President Robert Westcott of the Hudson Valley Volunteer Firemen Association. President David Chapman of the Hudson Mohawk Volunteer Fire Association. And Albany County Fire Coordinator, Car 1, John Walsh. At this time, we were told yesterday that JJ and Ricky Rogozinski were at a meeting with the state. And usually there's a cutoff time that the names can be placed onto the wall down at the plaza. With the efforts of these two gentlemen, that's been cut. And this year, in October, your father's name will be placed on the wall. And I thank you two for going above and beyond for that. I'd like to call Art Bowen, Fire Police Captain for Shaker Road, Loudonville, and one of Scotty's closest friends.
The words I'm about to say to me are Scotty. Show me a person who spends endless hours in training without pay, and I'll show you a volunteer. Show me a person where a cry for help brings split seconds to batch, and I'll show you a volunteer. Show me a person who is devastated when lives are lost in Maine, and I'll show you a volunteer. Show me a person who is graciously welcomed as a next-door neighbor. I'll show you a volunteer. Show me a person who takes ridicule more than compliments, and I'll show you a volunteer. Show me a person whose car is garaged with the grill facing out. I'll show you a volunteer. Show me a person who sacrifices home life, TV, and even tender moments. I'll show you a volunteer. Show me a person who is visibly moved at the strains of our national anthem. I'll show you a volunteer. Show me a person who may be asked to give more than just dedication. I'll show you a volunteer. And show me a person who asks to give more and more and more. I'll show you a volunteer. To me, that was Scotty.
Dispatcher, Menands car 36.
Dispatch, that car 36.
Dispatcher, could you raise Menands Fire Police Unit 844?
Dispatch, unit 844. Dispatch, unit 844. Dispatch, unit 844. Dispatcher to Menands, car 36, no reply.
Dispatcher, be advised, Menands Fire Police Unit 844, Captain Edgar Scott, has answered the final alarm.
Message received, Chief. Dispatch to all units in the field, Menands Fire Police Unit 844 has answered his last alarm. Fire control off glare at 2047, dispatching up.
At this time, firefighter Marcel will be taxed. Before we close this evening, Menands Fire Company would like to express their deepest condolences to the Philadelphia Fire Department. We also had a loss the same day, Scott. Firefighter Robert Marr. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight in remembrance of Scotty. I'd like to leave you with two thoughts. First, always remember Scotty loved to laugh. Secondly, that if some good can come out of this tragedy, is a show of brotherhood in the fire service. Scotty would definitely be proud of the way that the whole community rallied around us. Thank you and good night. At this time, I'd like to call Bishop Wall for a benediction.
God. We thank you once again for the life of Ed Scott among us. As we go forth from this place, help us to be good neighbors, to serve our communities, and make us instruments of your peace.